Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for getting up early and joining us here for this breakfast. I know it's a busy agenda all week, and we're all out at receptions at night, and so I appreciate you guys waking up early to join us today. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the IDEA 3G Diversity Breakfast on behalf of the International Astronautical Federation and our sponsors, I think for 4 years in a row now. The Jet Propulsion Laboratory from the California Institute of Technology has sponsored this event, and we appreciate their support. Past award winners, by the way, of our 3G Diversity Award, and we really appreciate the continued support. This idea of 3G diversity really, while we've always been striving to include all aspects of the space community, it really came to an inflection point in 2016. My predecessor, Jean-Yves Le Gall, really carried forward the effort and really the focus inside the IAF on geography, generation, and gender, the 3 Gs that we strive now in everything that we do in terms of our panels, our programming, all aspects of the committee structure, of the actual bureau and the governing body. We think it's important and that we're better as we connect all space people for bringing together all of these aspects. And I think we know we elevated at one I can't remember the exact year, but a few years ago, bringing the SGAC into full partnership with us as we did with the IISL and the IAA. So this, I think, was one of the great ways to demonstrate that on the generational aspect, that we were striving to really bring in the next generation. For this conference, by the way, here, and thanks again to our hosts and organizers at Osler Cosmos, 41%, am I right? 41% of the registrants and delegates for this conference are under 35 years old, which is fantastic. Again, I always say this, but our demographics for our conferences are awesome. Any other organization, trade show, conference would love to have 41% of their people coming from under 35. This is our future, and it's a fantastic example of how the IAF is really unique in trying to attract the next generation to our event. This breakfast, everybody should know, is, and we also have a luncheon, by the way, that's sponsored. Who's our sponsor this year for the luncheon? Christian? We don't have a sponsor. All right, so anyone who wants to sponsor the luncheon can join us right now. You can sign up right away. We need another JPL. That's what we need, another JPL. Yeah, okay. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome on the stage our Vice President for Diversity Initiatives and the founding co-chair of the IAF Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Administrative Committee, IDEA, Mishaal ASHEMIMRY.
Good morning, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here so early, as Clay mentioned. So I'm very honored to be here to celebrate this first IDEA 3G diversity event. I took office as an IAF Vice President for Diversity Initiatives last year, and I'm very proud that over the past few months, in an effort to increase engagement and activities to ensure diversity throughout the aerospace community and throughout the IAF community, we created with the IAF the committee that is called the Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Administrative Committee. If you're French, you will call it IDEA. If you are American, you'll call it IDEA Committee. So the whole purpose of this committee is to ensure diversity and to promote activities that promote diversity throughout all the organizations within IAF. What we are trying to do this year, because we created this committee in March, and one of the initiatives, because you cannot essentially make progress without recognizing where you're at today, it is very critical for us to measure where we are in order to put goals to where we need to go. And so in order to do that, we created a checklist that we will be putting out. That checklist will have certain aspects, whether it's gender, geography, generation, participation, inclusiveness, gender-neutral language, or neutral language, inclusive language in an organization, their efforts in promoting diversity and inclusivity in their organizations, so that each organization can take this checklist and tell us where they're at in order to set where they need to be. The whole point is not to say, hey, you're not doing so well. It's to say, this is where I'm at and I'm okay with it, but I'm not happy with the numbers and I need to achieve these goals in the next few years. Year 1, year 2, year 3. In doing so, those who do well can have a stamp that says that they are 3G compliant. You can either be a silver, gold, or platinum 3G compliant. So that will be rolled out hopefully by the end of this IAC, and that's what we're looking forward to do. So as you know, diversity is a continuous source of growth and wealth for our societies and communities, and it enables better thinking because you have more people that think differently and not the same perspective throughout. So that's what we're trying to do here. So with that, it is my great pleasure to introduce our community's most active supporters of diversity, the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. They are a previous recipient for the IAF Excellence in 3G Award, as Clay mentioned, and have consistently supported this breakfast event. I warmly invite you to join me in a very long applause to Dr. Keyur Patel, Director for Astronomy and Physics Directorate at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Dr. Patel will join me on stage to give an insightful talk about psychological safety, a foundation for another acronym, DEIA. Thank you so much for being here and this early. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Good morning. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of JPL to the Diversity Breakfast. As Clay said earlier, we've been involved with this activity for the last 4 years. And this is something that's near and dear to JPL in how we do our missions and how we intend to move forward. What I'm going to talk about today is a topic called psychological safety. And it's a foundation for diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility at JPL. But before I get there, I want to start with, sorry, I can't see the screen. No, I'm fine over here. Now I know where I'm at, I can do the thing. What I'd like to start with is our guiding principles, or what we call our North Star. And there are basically 4 of them, and they're pretty simple. The first one is forefront of scientific discovery for the benefit of humanity through what we do. The second is to inspire people everywhere to think bigger. The third is to leverage our unique capabilities to advance space exploration. And the last is to create a safe, inclusive, exciting workplace where all can thrive. Thank you very much. And that's what I'm going to focus the majority of the talk on, is that last bullet. And as you can see, that is one of our guiding principles, or what we call our North Star. So in support of that, in February of this year, we rolled out a new DEIA strategy and vision based on inputs from our employees, our leaders, and it aligns with NASA's DEIA strategy and it's unique to JPL and what we do. And it has 4 major strategic goals. The first one is a diverse community. The second one is equitable opportunities, accessible workplace, and trust and accountability. I'll cover these points in brief, but the majority of this talk is going to be based on the last topic of trust and accountability. Diverse community is exactly what it is. We want connections and networks across differences, talents, partners, people, and a qualified labor workforce that represents the U.S. We want equitable opportunities, right? No bias on hiring, selection, so on and so forth. We want a workplace that's accessible to all mankind, from a disabled individual to, any other areas where people may need help in accessing JPL. And the last one is trust and accountability. And that is a culture based on mutual trust between our colleagues and leaders, And our colleague trusts internal reporting systems and not fear reprisals. And that is a key thing, is not to fear that should you speak out or speak against, that you're going to be reprised against. So within those categories, we've chosen different priorities for each one of these. And the last one, trust and accountability, we want to establish a psychological safety for our teams. And we've chosen these goals in areas. So based on our historical data from interacting with our employees, both qualitative and quantitative, and taking that and analyzing that and breaking it up into the 4 goals that you see over there. These goals are going to be measurable and achievable, and they will be looked at, evaluated every year in the sense of how we're doing against them and whether they need to be modified or new goals need to be brought in. So, let's define what is psychological safety. And the best way I can do that is the definition that has been provided by Amy Edmondson. And that is, it's a belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes, and the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. It is not about motivation. It is about freeing people to really engage and not be afraid of each other on doing what they need to do. You know, the best way to look at it is that graph that Amy created. On the y-axis, you have psychological safety. On the x-axis, you have motivation and accountability. And you know, where you really want to operate is in the upper right-hand corner, which is high performance zone. But let's explore the other 3 for a minute so you understand why you want to be in that high performance zone. You know, if the lower left is where you have low psychological safety, low motivation, and accountability. And that's basically the apathy zone. Lack of enthusiasm, lack of motivation, lack of interest. If you move up from there, you have the comfort zone, where everybody's happy with doing absolutely nothing. Laissez-faire, you know, we're good, so on and so forth. And that's not a very good place for us to be. In the lower right-hand corner is the anxiety zone. And that is low psychological safety, but high motivation and accountability. And that's where people are doing the work, but not talking, being afraid, and so on and so forth. But the best place to be is the upper right-hand corner, where you have high psychological safety and high motivation and accountability. And that is where you want to be, in the sense of if you don't want any uncertainty and dependence. You want people free to speak, express ideas, dialogue going on, interactions, and so on and so forth. It is to create this psychological safety in the teams that we have is critical for ensuring the most of every single individual that you have working on the project or working on any team that you have. If you don't do this, you will not hear the best ideas. You will not hear the best ways of doing things. You will not hear the best ways to improve your process moving forward. So, how do we do this? First is, as leaders, we actually have to create this. You know, you have to leave your ego aside, and you actually have to admit that if you don't know something, you don't know something, and you're willing to explore the space. You have to admit that if you make a mistake, you have to own it and not blame others for it. You have to listen. And you have to listen carefully, because one of the things is you have to be able to figure out what it is that you want to do and what is it that you don't want to do. And as leaders, we're always going to be provided a lot of information, and we need to figure out what it is that we want to act upon and not act upon. So, what are the actions should a leader take? You want to set clear expectations in the framework that you've developed for your team. You want to elicit ideas and concerns that they have, and you want to emphasize a purpose for doing all of this. You want to accept failure. You don't want to blame people. You want to make that as a lessons learned activity where you learn from those mistakes, and everybody learns from those mistakes, and we move forward from that. So where are we in our psychological safety development and approach moving forward? So the first thing we did was assess and measure what we need to do. We conducted an engagement survey, and that's completed. Out of that came the February 2023 goals and priorities that we established. We're going to follow up with another survey on how that is going at the laboratory in the early part of 24. And now we're moving forward on having this implemented in our missions and projects as we move forward. First area we're going to focus on is on technical reviews, and that's in progress. I don't know if anybody here interacts with JPL or has sat through some of our design reviews. For a better way of putting it, they're not nice. We are known for our technical penetration, and some of those conversations get heated based on your technical belief. So I think and if you're a younger individual or if you're somebody who has not been exposed to this is something where you will basically be quiet and not respond in the proper way. So that is something we're working on, is making sure you ask the questions in the right way. You make sure the individual doesn't feel threatened when they're responding, and so on and so forth. We're also going to do another survey in the second quarter of 2024 on exactly how we're doing on psychological safety across the laboratory, and see what comes out of that, and then adjust accordingly. And then we're doing this as we speak. You know, we're empowering our leaders, both at the senior leadership level, middle management, and team leaders on implementing psychological safety and behaving the proper way. So with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you. That was really a great overview of real good progress in terms of what we're seeing with the emerging workforce. So do you actually cover this kind of thing in terms of your onboarding? When you have new hires come in, are they introduced to this framework and understand that they can be given permission to have that psychological safety?
Yes, we have an onboarding process where individuals, as they come on board, they're briefed on this, and then through their line management, they're briefed on this to make sure that the openness is there, that they shouldn't feel afraid to speak out. So this is starting to be the part of the whole cloth at JPL. Any other questions?
Thank you very much. I'm from EPFL, and in our university, there's a lot of, I would say, efforts in the last years also for like more diverse, but also to help like in case of like misconduct for colleagues, from colleagues to colleagues, any type of harassment. But then we see that sometimes there's a difficulty in terms of accountability and what happens next. So it means that people, they don't want to speak up because then they know nothing will happen. And I think this is also very general in our society. So I was wondering if and I see that's very linked to psychological safety, because you know that you will be blamed for being a victim, and then the aggressor might not be, I would say, held accountable. So I was wondering if there was something that you looked in this direction in your program.
So summarizing the question is how do we implement this, and how do we protect the employee should they raise a concern regarding this? At JPL, for the longest of time, if an employee has a concern regarding this, there's a process that they can go through with human resources that is held at a very discreet level, so they can approach them, they can talk about this. And in fact, to even help with this thing, JPL just hired a few months ago an ombudsman to help with some of this stuff. So they go through that process. HR does an independent investigation, and so that way the employee who is concerned is never exposed to the people who are the offending party. And so, you know, everything is kept above board. Independent people look at it, and should an employee be found of misbehaving, the appropriate conversations or actions take place to correct that behavior. Any other question? Yes.
So thank you for your presentation. You know, I come from East Asian culture, so to see a presentation like this is really interesting and impressive. And I want to ask you, how much support from the top do you get in implementing this kind of initiative? And also, what's the biggest challenge do you actually encounter in the process? Thank you.
Thank you. So your first question on how much support do we get? We have it at the highest level. In fact, you saw it on our North Star, the guiding principles. That is one of the main items that we intend to do this, right? Of a diverse workforce and protection and so on and so forth. The second question, I think the biggest challenge is it's cultural, right? You have an organization that has a very low turnover rate. In fact, JPL has one of the lowest turnover rate in history. So you have a large population that has behaved a certain way for many decades. And it is now getting them educated, as well as expressing to the new people coming in that they don't have, that, you know, that this is available to them. So it's an effort that we all have to work at to blend the two cultures on how we move forward.
Hi, I'd like to pick up on the point on the large population that needs to be educated, the change in culture that's needed. So how does JPL actually educate or motivate the bulk of your people who would not be in the minority and would also be in positions of power or influence already? How do you convey to them that it is important for them? And how do you get them to change that culture and mindset to be inclusive of parties that, you know, when they themselves are not affected by these changes?
It's a good question. So first of all, let me be clear. You know, not all of JPL behaves this way. Even the population that's been there for a while, most of them get it. They, you know, it's only a handful of people or a set of people where you have to focus your effort on, because a lot of people want to behave in the right way. A lot of people want to understand. A lot of people want to hear each other talk and, you know, discuss ideas and so on and so forth. So it is the few set of, you know, individuals that you have, and there, you know, we have training programs in place. Everybody goes through those. And, you know, and if they still are not learning, right, as I talked about earlier, if they're still misbehaving, for a better choice of words, you know, there's other avenues that we have to adjust that behavior. Anybody else?
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the presentation. I have a question on supporting psychological safety. Do you have any programs relating to mental health first aiding?
Sorry, can you say the last part?
Mental health first aid.
We don't have a formal program, but, you know, when we believe that there is an individual that might need mental health help or something like that, our managers are trained to identify that or understand that, and then they report that to HR, that sets up that help and so on and so forth moving forward. Any more questions? If not, thank you.